You'd think unsold TVs get a discount tag and a second chance. They don't. In fact, some end up in shocking places. Others, simply destroyed. Why are perfectly good TVs being quietly erased from existence? Television manufacturers pump out new models faster than popcorn at a movie theater. Walk into any electronics store and you'll see dozens of shiny screens begging for attention. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Those TVs have an invisible expiration date ticking away from the moment they hit the showroom floor. Most popular models fly off the shelves within weeks. The 75-inch monsters with all the smart features, gone before you can say home theater. Those mid-range 43-inchers that offer decent bang for your buck, vanished faster than free pizza at a college dorm. But then there are the others, the models that just sit there, collecting dust and losing value every single day. Retailers know this game better than anyone. They track sales numbers like hawks watching mice. A TV that doesn't move within 60 to 90 days becomes what industry folks call a problem child. Makes sense, right? These aren't bananas we're talking about, but the principle is eerily similar. Sit too long and nobody wants you anymore. The weird part is how fast TV technology actually moves. Last year's cutting-edge processor becomes this year's bargain bin left over. That fancy upscaling feature everyone raved about 12 months ago? Well, now there's something even fancier that makes it look ancient. Companies launch new lineups every single year, sometimes twice a year, creating this relentless cycle where perfectly good TVs become old while still sealed in their original packaging. Store managers lose sleep over slow-moving inventory. Every day, a 50-inch TV sits unsold represents money bleeding from their budget. Floor space costs money. Storage costs money. Even the electricity powering those demo units costs money. When a TV model starts gathering dust for more than a few months, alarm bells start ringing in corporate offices. Then there's the psychology of shoppers. Nobody wants to buy last year's model when this year's version sits right next to it, even if the differences are minimal. It's like choosing between a 2023 car and a 2024 model. Logic says they're nearly identical, but our brains scream, "Get the newer one." This creates a vicious cycle where older inventory becomes increasingly harder to move. Some TVs never find their perfect match. Maybe they're priced too high for their features. Maybe they're too big for most living rooms, or too small for people's growing expectations. Maybe they're from a brand that doesn't have the marketing muscle of the big players. Whatever the reason, these electronic orphans start their journey toward an uncertain fate. But what exactly happens when stores realize certain models just won't sell? That's where things get interesting. And retailers have to make some tough decisions about moving inventory before it becomes a complete loss. When those shiny new TVs start collecting dust instead of dollars, retailers face a cold reality. Space costs money. Every square foot of showroom floor that houses a slow-selling television could showcase the latest model that customers actually want. The clock starts ticking faster when next season's inventory arrives at the loading dock. Smart store managers know the drill. They slash prices early and often. A 10% discount might grab a few bargain hunters, but 20 or 30% off really gets people talking. Well, talking and buying. The math is brutal but simple. Selling at a loss beats not selling at all. Then there's the psychology game. Clearance tags create urgency that regular price stickers never could. Shoppers who walked past that 55-inch display for months suddenly see dollar signs when red sale tags appear. Makes sense, right? Everyone loves feeling like they scored a deal, but retailers get creative when basic discounts fail. Bundle deals become their secret weapon. That slow-moving smart TV suddenly looks appealing when paired with a soundbar, streaming device, or extended warranty. The customer feels pampered with extras while the store moves stubborn inventory. Both sides win, theoretically. Let's not forget the seasonal shuffle. Super Bowl season ends, and those massive screens lose their appeal until football returns. Black Friday models stick around until Valentine's Day, then Easter, then summer. Each passing week chips away at profit margins like water-eroding stone. The weird part is how fast this happens. A television can go from hot commodity to clearance candidate in just 3 months. New models launch constantly, making yesterday's premium features look outdated. That voice control system everyone wanted? Now every TV has its standard. Regional differences make things trickier. Urban stores might clear inventory faster than rural locations. Wealthy neighborhoods demand different features than budget-conscious areas. One store's bestseller becomes another location's headache. And the pressure never stops mounting. Corporate headquarters tracks every unit, every day. Sales reports highlight which models move and which ones don't. Store managers get questioned about inventory that sits too long. Their bonuses depend on turning products quickly. Sometimes desperate measures emerge. Flash sales, social media promotions, employee discounts, anything to generate movement. Local radio ads announce warehouse clearance events that are really just regular stores trying to dump old stock. The strangest truth: perfectly good televisions become problems simply because newer ones exist. Technology moves so fast that 6-month-old inventory feels ancient. Customer expectations shift constantly, chasing the next big breakthrough. When all these tactics fail, retailers face harder choices. The showroom floor can't hold everything forever. Storage becomes the next stop for stubborn inventory. But that creates entirely new challenges that most customers never see. When stores finally admit defeat on those stubborn TVs gathering dust, something pretty interesting happens. Those shiny boxes don't just vanish into thin air. They take a little detour to what retailers politely call secondary storage. Translation: warehouses. Lots and lots of warehouses. These aren't your typical storage units either. We're talking about massive facilities where unsold electronics go to contemplate their existence. Every single day these TVs spend in warehouse purgatory costs money. Rent, climate control, security, insurance. The bills keep piling up while the TVs just sit there, completely oblivious to their expensive vacation. Here's where things get weird. Companies will often relist these same TVs online, sometimes at prices that make you scratch your head. That 65-inch smart TV that couldn't find love in the store? It might pop up on the retailer's website with a special online exclusive tag. Same TV, different story. Then there's the outlet center shuffle. Major retailers love moving their warehouse orphans to outlet locations where shoppers expect discounted goods. The psychology is brilliant, really. People walk into outlets already primed for deals, so they're less likely to question why last year's model is still kicking around. But warehouses aren't exactly gentle on merchandise. Boxes get shuffled, stacked, and occasionally dropped by forklifts driven by people who probably wish they were doing something else. Minor scuffs on packaging might seem trivial, but they slash resale value faster than you'd expect. Retail is ruthless about presentation. The really sneaky part? These warehoused TVs often disappear from regular retail channels entirely. Companies don't want customers stumbling across deeply discounted versions of products they're still trying to sell at full price elsewhere. It's like hiding your embarrassing relatives during a fancy dinner party. Storage facilities track every item with military precision. Barcodes, serial numbers, location mappings, they know exactly where each TV sits and how long it's been there. Some TVs become permanent residents, earning what warehouse workers jokingly call frequent flyer status. The clock keeps ticking, though. Technology doesn't wait for anyone, and neither do warehouse landlords demanding rent. Every month, these TVs remain unsold. Their theoretical value drops, while their storage costs climb. It's a race against time that many TVs are destined to lose. Companies eventually face a harsh reality check. Keeping perfectly good TVs in expensive warehouse space starts looking pretty foolish when the math stops adding up. The writing on the wall becomes impossible to ignore, and that's when retailers start making some truly desperate phone calls. What happens when those calls get answered? Well, that's where things get really interesting, because there's an entire shadow industry built around buying other people's retail mistakes. When warehouses fill up and retailers realize those shiny new TVs aren't moving, they make a phone call. Not to their mothers, not to customer service. They call the liquidators. These aren't your average business folks. Liquidators are the vultures of the retail world, swooping in when companies need to dump inventory fast. They buy leftover TVs at prices so low it would make your wallet weep with joy. We're talking 50% off retail price, or even less. Sometimes, way less. Why would retailers agree to such brutal discounts? Well, storing unsold TVs costs money every single day. Warehouse space isn't free. Insurance isn't free. And watching perfectly good TVs gather dust while newer models arrive definitely isn't profitable. Retailers would rather get something back than write off the entire loss. The weird part is how this creates a whole underground economy. Liquidators don't just buy one or two TVs, they purchase entire truckloads, hundreds of units at once. Then they become the middlemen, selling these TVs to discount chains, online marketplaces, and small electronics dealers who couldn't normally afford such inventory. But here's where it gets interesting. Some of these liquidated TVs never even stay in the country. Liquidators ship them overseas to markets where last year's technology still feels cutting edge. A 55-inch TV that couldn't find a buyer in Denver might end up in someone's living room in Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia. Different markets, different standards, different prices. The liquidation game moves fast, too. These companies don't sit around waiting for the perfect buyer. They need to flip inventory quickly to make room for the next batch of unwanted electronics. Speed matters more than maximizing profit on individual units. Then there are the specialty liquidators who focus entirely on electronics. They understand TV specs, know which models hold value better, and can spot the difference between a temporary sales slump and a truly unwanted product. These experts can turn retailer headaches into their own profitable ventures. What's fascinating is how liquidators help retailers avoid complete disasters. Without this safety net, stores would face total write-offs on unsold inventory. Instead, they reclaim at least a fraction of their investment. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. The liquidation process also reveals something strange about consumer behavior. TVs that wouldn't sell at 30% off retail price suddenly become attractive when they show up at discount outlets with different branding and presentation. Same TV, different story. Most shoppers never realize they're buying liquidated inventory. The TVs work perfectly, come in original packaging, and often include full warranties. The only difference is the journey they took to reach that final sale. But what happens to the TVs that even liquidators can't move? Well, that's when things get really interesting, and the environment starts playing a bigger role in our story. When liquidators can't move those leftover TVs and retailers have given up hope, something interesting happens. The shiny new televisions that once promised crystal-clear entertainment take a very different path. They head straight to recycling plants, where their glamorous showroom days become a distant memory. Electronics recycling isn't exactly what most people picture when they think about where old gadgets go to die. These facilities look more like industrial factories than graveyards for technology. Workers carefully dismantle each television, separating the valuable materials from the junk. The process is surprisingly methodical and profitable for the right companies. Here's where it gets fascinating. A typical flat-screen TV contains about 15 different types of materials. Copper wiring gets pulled out first since it's worth decent money. The plastic casing gets sorted by type because not all plastics recycle the same way. Glass from the screen goes into one pile, while circuit boards get their own special treatment. Those tiny components contain trace amounts of gold, silver, and other precious metals that add up quickly when you're processing thousands of units. But recycling electronics isn't just about making money. TVs contain some nasty stuff that shouldn't end up in regular landfills. Lead, mercury, and other toxic materials hide inside these innocent-looking entertainment boxes. When those chemicals leak into soil and water, they cause serious environmental problems that last for decades. The numbers tell an interesting story about American waste habits. Only about 25% of unwanted electronics actually make it to proper recycling facilities. The rest? Well, that's a problem for another day. The recycling rate varies wildly by state, too. Some places do much better than others at keeping old TVs out of regular trash. Then there's the weird economics of electronics recycling. Some materials are worth enough to make the whole operation profitable. Others cost money to handle safely, which means recycling companies have to balance their books carefully. When metal prices drop, fewer TVs get recycled because the math stops working out. Government rules play a big role in this whole process. Federal regulations require proper handling of hazardous materials, which drives up costs but keeps dangerous chemicals from poisoning communities. Some states have their own electronics recycling laws that make manufacturers responsible for disposal costs. Makes sense, right? The companies that create the problem help pay to fix it. What's really surprising is how much of a recycled TV actually gets reused. About 80% of the materials find new life in other products. That copper becomes new wiring. The plastic turns into everything from park benches to new electronic cases. Even the glass gets melted down and reformed. But not every unsold TV makes it to recycling plants. Some retailers discover they have other options that don't involve breaking their inventory into pieces. Sometimes, giving away perfectly good televisions makes more sense than destroying them. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to an unsold TV is finding a new home where it's actually wanted. When retailers run out of selling options, they often turn to donations. Schools, community centers, homeless shelters, and nonprofit organizations become the unexpected beneficiaries of brand-new televisions that simply couldn't find buyers in the regular market. The math works differently here. Instead of losing the entire investment, companies can claim tax deductions for charitable donations. The IRS allows businesses to write off the fair market value of donated goods, which means a $500 TV that wouldn't sell might still provide $150 in tax benefits. Not amazing, but better than zero. Charities love these donations because they receive technology they'd never afford otherwise. A community center that's been showing movies on a fuzzy 15-inch screen from 2008 suddenly gets a crisp 43-inch smart TV. These organizations often operate on shoestring budgets, where buying new electronics ranks somewhere below keeping the lights on and fixing leaky roofs. Then there's the timing factor. Donations typically happen when TVs are still relatively current, but retailers need space fast. A TV that's 6 months old might be outdated by retail standards, but feels cutting edge to a youth center that's never owned anything with streaming capabilities built in. Smart retailers also discovered that publicizing large donations creates positive press coverage. When Best Buy donates 50 TVs to local schools, it generates goodwill that money can't buy. The marketing value sometimes exceeds the actual tax benefits, making donation campaigns a win for everyone involved. But here's where things get interesting. Not every charity wants these TVs, especially smaller organizations without proper storage or security. A 32-inch television might seem like a generous gift until someone realizes it needs mounting hardware, cables, and a safe place to install it. Some donations end up creating more problems than they solve. Educational institutions represent the sweet spot for TV donations. Schools can integrate them into classrooms, libraries, or common areas where they'll actually get used daily. Students benefit from better technology, teachers gain presentation tools, and the donated TVs fulfill their original purpose of displaying content. The weird part is how selective this process becomes. Companies won't donate just anything. TVs with minor cosmetic damage, opened boxes, or missing accessories often get rejected for donation programs. Charities want items they can use immediately, not projects requiring additional investment or repair work. Religious organizations also receive significant numbers of donated TVs, using them for presentations, community events, or educational programs. These institutions often have volunteer labor available for installation and maintenance, making them ideal recipients for electronic donations. Yet even this charitable route has limits. When donation programs reach capacity or organizations become picky about specific brands and features, retailers must explore their final option for unwanted inventory. What happens when nothing else works? When liquidators pass, charities say no thanks, and recycling plants won't take them? Well, perfectly good televisions get destroyed. Completely destroyed. We're talking about brand new TVs that could entertain families for years, crushed into unrecognizable chunks of plastic and metal. Companies don't just toss these into regular dumpsters either. They hire specialized destruction services that document every single unit being demolished. Why all the paperwork? Because retailers need proof these TVs are gone forever. Insurance companies, manufacturers, and tax authorities all want receipts showing exactly how many units got obliterated. The process itself is surprisingly industrial. TVs get fed into massive shredders that tear through screens, circuits, and frames within seconds. Some facilities use hydraulic crushers that flatten entire pallets of televisions at once. The sound alone would make you cringe. Thousands of dollars worth of technology getting pulverized in minutes. But here's the twisted part. Retailers often destroy working TVs specifically to protect their pricing strategies. If too many cheap TVs flood the market, it hurts sales of newer models. Makes sense from a business perspective, right? But watching functional electronics get demolished while people struggle to afford basic entertainment feels pretty ridiculous. Government regulations sometimes force these destruction decisions too. Older TV models might not meet current safety standards, even though they work perfectly fine. Rather than deal with potential liability issues, companies choose the nuclear option. Destroy everything and move on. Then there's the warranty fraud angle. Unsold TVs floating around in secondary markets create headaches for manufacturers. Someone buys a new TV that's actually 3 years old, then expects full warranty support when it breaks. Rather than track down every unit, some companies find destruction cheaper than customer service nightmares. The numbers behind this waste are staggering. Industry insiders estimate that roughly 2 to 3% of all manufactured TVs never reach a single living room. They go straight from factory to warehouse to destruction facility. That's millions of screens vanishing annually, without ever displaying a single movie or game. Security concerns add another layer to the destruction madness. High-end TVs contain valuable components that could be harvested and resold. Companies worry about theft rings targeting their disposal processes, so they opt for immediate destruction instead of risking organized crime getting involved. Some facilities try recovering materials during destruction, separating metals and plastics for future use. But most components get so mangled during the demolition process that recovery becomes impossible. Advanced chips, precision screens, and carefully engineered speakers all become worthless fragments. The environmental impact stings even more when you consider the resources wasted. Mining rare earth metals, manufacturing circuits, shipping components globally. All that effort ends up producing nothing but expensive garbage. Next time you see a TV sale, remember this reality. Those discount prices often represent the last chance before perfectly good technology disappears forever into industrial shredders.